Okay. All right. This is 15 Minutes with Blake. I'm your host, Blake Linklater. And on the show today is Anna Kareis. Anna, did I say that right? Your last name?
You got close. Karis,
Ooh.
like carrots without the
Karis.
T's.
Perfect. All right. Well, nice to meet you, Anna. Anna, tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, and what you're doing now.
Hi everybody. My name's Anna. I am a financial advisor and business development director for Centennial Wealth Management down in Columbia, Maryland.
Awesome. What do you do as a business development director?
So, right now, business development director is a catch all term for everything that helps develop new business for the firm. I think traditionally, business development director is someone who's in charge of like center of influence relationships. So, in our industry, that would be estate planning attorneys who could potentially refer clients or who we could refer clients to, tax accountants, CPAs, other attorneys. And then if you're getting really creative, I know back when I was in San Antonio, I had some great relationships with marriage and family therapists as well as wedding planners, which were sort of non traditional COI relationships for financial planning, but ended up being really beneficial.
Cool. Awesome. So one of the things I always like to do on this show is kind of explore the background, briefly of, your biggest successes, biggest failures, but also how you got into it.
Yeah.
So, like two or three questions coming in a row. How did you get into the business? How did you get into the role? And then, yeah, then your biggest success and the biggest failure. But let's start with how did you get into it?
Yeah. So I like to joke that I was dragged backwards into the industry. Out of college, I was in education. So I was teaching high school math, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. And it was great, but it is not what I had seen myself doing. I had planned on going to law school, like a lot of young people who like to argue. That's what I had been told I should do the entire time I was growing up, effectively. And took the law school entrance exam my last year of college, put applications out, but ultimately decided not to go to law school because apparently being a lawyer is a lot less law and order than it is just paperwork and really long hours. And all of the attorneys that I met, especially the early career ones that I was able to chat with before that decision, none of them were really super happy with their lives. Some of them were well compensated but overworked. All of them were overworked, unfortunately, and it just didn't seem great to me. So made the decision not to go to law school, ended up in education, and all throughout all of this, I'd had a mentor from college who had been either trying to get me to intern for him or telling me how great I would be in the financial services world. And I was like, no, 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 Jory, I'm going to go do this other thing. And then, went into education. I was like, no, 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 I'm going to go do this other thing. And then finally, as my tenure in the world of education was coming to an end, I was like, all right, Jory, I don't know what to do. I've tried this thing and it didn't work out, and I need a backup plan. Um, and at that point, like any good mentor, he was like, all right, I'm not asking you anymore. I'm telling you you're going to apply. So I applied in a local office of my previous company and ended up being accepted and spent 5 years there.
Cool. Very cool. I noticed the same things with accountants too when I was in
Yeah.
college. Like, I was, asking all my professors, like, why did you want to be in? I still remember one of my professors just loved to put the numbers in the boxes, and that was in the old day of the general ledgers, and I'm sure they still exist today. But I'm like, all right, I'll teach their own. But no one really seemed particularly happy other than working, long hours and good money. So,
Yep.
I think there's some commonalities there. What's been your biggest success today?
I think biggest success to date was probably the transition from my old firm to my new firm. It was very, very quick. And I found somewhere that I really enjoyed solely through using my network. And I would call that a pretty big success for me personally. And when I say quick, I mean like 6 weeks from the day I was, decided I was ready to leave my last firm to the day I started with the new one.
Cool. And how about your biggest failure?
I would say biggest failure was probably tied into leaving my last firm as well. I started there when I was very young, 21, 22 years old. and had sort of absorbed this message, either, because it was told to me intentionally or just because it's what I heard, that, this is the place to be, this is the only way to do it. If you can't make it here, you're not successful. I'd absorbed a lot of that messaging. And so while I was ready to leave my last firm and I knew ultimately it's what was right for me and my family, it still felt like a pretty big failure to finally rip the
Mhm.
band-aid off, pull the cord, and say I was ready to leave.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a very hard thing when you jump out on your own or when you leave an old venture.
Mhm,
It is just trusting yourself and trusting the process and having faith in it and to rip the cord out, like you say. And but it takes you have to have that faith to do it because on the other side is bigger and brighter things.
mhm. And like I said, and it was not in that I hadn't been courting this firm for my new firm for a long time. Like I said, it was a 6-week process. So it wasn't that I had all this data. I just knew, in, that place in your gut that instinctively knows things, that this
Yeah.
is the right place for me, this is the right move for me. And honestly,
Mhm.
I think having some data and a longer history with them might have made things a little bit easier, and just that I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I've known these people for years. In our industry, things, an advisor transition can be a multi-year process. The a new firm court, that you connect at a conference, and you're courted by the new firm for years, and you've known them for a while. But no, it was genuinely 6 weeks. I had nothing to indicate that this was the right fit for me, other than that just little instinctive feeling in my gut. And so far, it's worked out, but obviously the gut can lie every once in a
Yeah.
while or be misunderstood.
Let's. I want to touch on that a bit. Last week, I had a great. She's very intuitive and very. We had a lot of fun on it, but she's very intuitive on it. And how did you know in your gut? Like, what did it feel like? And I asked that for myself too. Like, so many times I had this feeling in my gut, and I didn't listen to it. But so I guess for you specifically, what did it feel like? How did you know that this was your gut? Like, what I guess going a little woo woo here, but what did you? I don't know. How'd you know? And like that little feeling, what did it look like to you? What did it look and feel like?
So for me, and I've made a lot of big life decisions based on that feeling in my gut. So it wasn't like this wasn't the first rodeo for me. I've had some practice listening to this little thing in my gut and knowing, at least being able to mildly interpret what it's trying to tell me.
Yes.
So I think stepping back a little bit, the way the inside of my head and my body normally feels, as most people can potentially gather just from watching me for a couple minutes on video, I'm very high energy. I talk quickly, my thoughts move quickly, and there's usually, as much as I talk in tangents, there's usually 2 or 3 different tangents happening in my head at any given time. Uh, I
Mhm.
like to I like to describe it as, a browser with lots of tabs open at any given moment, and every once in a while one of those tabs is playing music and you're not 100% sure where it's coming from, but there's just chaos in there, and I've learned to work with it, and I've learned to harness it to my advantage. But that's just sort of what my normal state is. And I've learned from making some big decisions using my gut that the opposite is what's true when I need to tune in. So it feels very quiet and still and calm to me whenever I'm in one of those instinctive gut moments. And I made my university decision that way. I knew I was going to go to this university within 20 minutes of being on campus, and it was halfway across the country from where my family were, and I'd never spent any time there, and my closest family was 4 hours away, but I knew it was right for me within 20 minutes because of that feeling. And did the same when I met my husband, and it wasn't quite 20 minutes within meeting him, but it was definitely within the first month. I knew, because it felt quiet and calm and still versus, my normal, you know,
Yeah.
ADHD spiral.
Fair enough. Cool. Very. Yeah, and that's pretty cool. Very interesting. Uh, from your success to date, what do you think has been one key to your success?
I would say one of them is my ability to teach people things. The going back to my time in education and potentially even further back to when I was in my teenage years and I was either teaching swim lessons or coaching swim team or being a camp counselor at like a sports camp. I have always been a teacher in some way, shape, or form, and was able to harness and train up those skills when I was in the classroom. And I found that being an advisor, the ability to take a concept that feels really big and scary, like Algebra 1 or like money and personal finance, and distill it into something that feels easy to understand and more importantly, easy to take action on is a massively undervalued skill. And then being able to take that skill and pair it with just sort of my high energy nature has been a pretty big key for my success, honestly.
Cool. Honestly, that's pretty cool. Uh, so I always say in this business, or in any business really, like the general public doesn't know the difference between whatever Merrill Lynch, RBC, TD, whatever Edward Jones. They don't know the difference. To them, we're all the same. And I got that from one of my early virtual mentors, Don Connolly, and who's a good. If you haven't read any of his stuff, just Google him, and he's awesome on like creating analogies and storytelling for advisors, and about being different. And so, what makes you different from other advisors? Because different is better than better. So what makes you different?
Well, so the one thing I've got is that I don't necessarily look like the average advisor. The average when people think financial advisor, they think, and no offense, but they think pale, male, and stale. So a
Yeah,
white man in his mid 50s is generally what people think when they think financial advisors. And while the camera does a good job of showing it, I am plenty pale. I am neither male nor stale. So I think just that little bit of differentiating factor based on the package I come in is one thing. I also think I have had just different life experience than a lot of advisors, coming through the world of education first and then moving into a client service and client support role. I think has, like I said, it taught me a very valuable skill. And, rather than using big words to make people feel like they need me, I can, take this big world and make it seem very simple and like they can making people feel like they can actually take control of this.
yeah, cool. All right. Well, look, we're coming near the end here. I always like to end it with, what's one action my listeners can take. So, if anybody's listening, they're whatever, a junior advisor, they're a senior advisor, they're an accountant, lawyer, I don't know, they're just an entrepreneur, doesn't matter. But what's one action listeners can take to help, move them closer to anything they're working on that you would recommend?
So I would say so there's two. There's one like work advice piece and one life advice piece. So work advice, I would say whatever your big goal is, I would break that into one or two small daily actions that you can take in order to continue to move forward towards a big goal. Just because I found that big goals can be great and they can be really motivating for a little while, but then as the reality of actually having to hit it hits you, it can be very, very difficult. So if your goal is, 10 new retainer clients by the end of the year, okay, what does it take to get one new retainer client? How many referrals does that take you, or how many meetings does that take you, or whatever? And every day work yourself towards that next client in that case. So, daily actions that'll get you towards those big goals because ultimately it is a habits and routines thing at the end of the day. And then on the life advice piece, which is going to seem counterintuitive to some listeners, but I promise it's helpful, is to decenter work in your life. I think people who are business owners or serious professionals of any variety, I think that we tie so much of our identity into what we do for a living. And it can ultimately be to our detriment because it means when work isn't going well, when we didn't get that big client or when maybe we get laid off because the economy is cyclical and that happens. we lose this big piece of our identity, and it can throw people into a real tail spiral because they've lost this piece, or this piece of themselves that they thought was all of themselves isn't really there. So make sure that you're developing that identity outside of work, with your family, with your hobbies, with the other things that you enjoy doing with your time, because work is important. It is a part of our life, but it is not our whole life. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. Perfect. So awesome. Again, this is 15 minutes with Blake. So again, Anna, like if people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm going to be most active on LinkedIn. I think that's where you and I met each other. So that's
Yeah.
probably the easiest people to come across me. Luckily, I'm the only Anna Karis on LinkedIn, as far as I know, anyway. So I should be pretty easy to track down. And if you're looking to connect with me more professionally, as in you're looking to work with me as an advisor, just go ahead and shoot me an email. It'll be Anna, first name dot last name Karis at ampf.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Anna. As always, love to hear what you guys think on this episode. You can hit me up on all social media platforms. And again, you can hit Anna primarily on LinkedIn or via email. Pleasure speaking with you. Enjoy the rest of your week. And thanks again, Anna. Have a great rest of your week too.
Thanks for having me.